So today I'm going to do a video about the cosine rule, and this was actually suggested by a viewer. I won't leave their name in case they want to remain anonymous, but I will reply to your comment and you can comment in the comment section, shout yourself out if you want. And as for anyone else, if you want to leave any questions or comments, just feel free to interact below. So the video I'm going to be doing is on the cosine rule. I will be explaining the cosine rule and I will be doing an example of how to find a particular side length. Now for part 2, I will be explaining how to find the particular angle, whether that be angle A, B or C. And yeah, so let's see our first question. So this is our first question where we have a triangle with 7 centimeters on one side, 8 centimeters on one side, and then 45-degree angle, and they've labeled A. So before I get into how to do this example, I want to do a general understanding of the cosine rule. So I found a really great image from a website called donsteward.blogspot. I will leave a link down below. I'm not affiliated or anything. I just thought they did a really good way of surmising what equation to use and when. So there's purple ones on the left and there's kind of darker orangey brown ones on the right. The first thing we want to do is label the triangle. So with our triangle, we already know one side and it's called A. If you haven't got any labels on your triangle, you can label them yourself, or if you have some labels, you can fill the rest in. Now it doesn't matter what side you call A, B or C, or what angle you call A, B or C. Now there is only one rule to follow, and that's the lowercase letter has to be opposite the higher case letter. So for example, the angle, which is always the higher capital letter, is going to be capital A or capital B, capital C, and the side opposite that angle, so the one literally opposite it, is going to be the lowercase of the same letter. So capital A will have small a opposite, capital C will have small c opposite, and etc, etc. That's the first thing you want to do. You just want to label your triangle, and that's the one rule you have to follow. Next up, are you going to be trying to find a side or an angle? If you're trying to find a side, you want to use one of the equations on the right. If you're finding an angle, you want to use one of the equations on the left. Just as an example, if we wanted to find, let's say, C, the length of C, we would use the formula C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared minus 2AB cos C. Now, you should use that one because it's isolated as like, oh, C squared, so we can plug everything else in and square root it. Now, if you're trying to find an angle, for example, let's say we want to find angle A, we will use cos A is equal to B squared plus C squared minus A squared all over 2BC. And then you will use a sort of inverse cos to eventually work out the value of A as an angle. But for this video, we're going to be showing how to find a side. Again, for part 2, I will show exactly as an example how to find the angle of, a particular angle in a triangle. Now, I hope that all made sense so far. If it didn't, hopefully the rest of this video will help explain everything. But if you still have a question, just leave it down below. So back to our example, we have a triangle with 45 degrees, and then we have 7 centimeters, 8 centimeters, and we have a little a we need to find. So I'm going to use the formula A squared is equal to B squared plus C squared minus 2BC cos A. So the first thing we should do is label our sides and angles. Now we already have lowercase a marked, so we know the opposite angle is going to be capital A. And I just labeled the side 7 centimeters lowercase b and 8 centimeters lowercase c. So the opposite angles will be B and C. And again, I could have labeled either of them B or C. It doesn't really matter. So now we know our values, we're just going to sub them into the formula. So we want to be very careful, make sure we're doing this accurately. So A squared is going to be B squared to start off with, which is just going to be 7 centimeters squared, plus C squared, which we know is 8 centimeters. So that's 8 centimeters squared, minus, now I like to leave this last bit all in brackets just so it doesn't get confused because we are subtracting it, but make sure you work out everything in this bracket first, or at least put it into your calculator properly and then subtract it. So 2BC cos A, that's going to be 2 times 7 because B is 7, C is 8, so times 8 times cos of 45 degrees because angle A is 45 degrees. We've labeled it as that. Next line, I'm just simplifying it a bit. So we've got A squared is 49 centimeters squared plus 64 centimeters squared minus 112 centimeters squared, all in brackets, multiplying cos 45 degrees. We've literally just subbed everything in. I've times it out a little bit. Now the next line is when we work it all out, A squared is going to be 33.80404051 centimeters squared. So A is just going to be the square root of this. So we square root both sides. A is then going to be 5.814, etc, centimeters. And if we want that to 3 significant figures, that's going to be 5.81 centimeters. Now, there are components there which you might not understand, like why is it centimeter squared? How do I square root stuff? These are all things to learn separately, but assuming you know how to do these other things, just pick the right formula, label your triangle first, obviously, then pick the right formula based on that, and then just sub them all in very carefully. Make sure you're using brackets properly on your calculator. And from there, it should be pretty straightforward. But if you do have any questions, just let me know. I hope it helped. Thanks again for the request for the video. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Best of luck with your maths, and thanks again for watching.